Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the south-afrifur podcast. You're listening to myself, Ivik, my
Yeah.
co-host, Scratch.
Yeah, they're not
Yes?
speaking to anybody. Just saying.
Yeah, no, they're speaking to everyone, okay? It's an open conversation.
We're speaking to
Okay.
everyone.
Oh, God, meta.
Oh.
And our guest this evening is, do I just call you Howl?
Yep, that's fine.
All right, cool. So Howl will be our guest this evening. He is a publisher in America for Thurston Howl Publishers. And he's done a couple of interesting things, like working with Carl Gold once, was it?
Yes, that's correct.
And then also worked with publishing for Fred Padden. Do I say that
Yep,
correctly?
we published him twice, and he's one of our editors occasionally.
Very cool.
All right. So, very, very cool. So, if you don't mind, we can probably just jump straight into this. I guess, let's go with question one. How long have you been part of the fandom?
I've probably been in the fandom for about 4 years now, which is surprising considering I now run a publishing house in it. Yeah, I actually started out in my undergraduate career doing research on animals in American culture, and I stumbled across the furry fandom for the first time.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
Big.
No, I mean, it was, I had seen first the news articles, which was terrifying. I was like, this would be a great case study. And I went to this local coffee meet expecting people in bondage gear and all kinds of stuff. And they're just a bunch of nerds playing video games at the coffee tables. Okay, I like this.
Huh.
Lo and behold, they were actually people.
Exactly, right?
Who'd have thought?
Who'd have thunk?
All right. So, like, in the 4 years that, I mean, how long did it take you to actually get Thurston Howl Publishers up?
It started out actually the next year, so that was 2015. In 2014, I had, well, by that time, I already self-published 2 of my own novels. And then I was working with the National Wolf Watcher Coalition, which is basically just this wolf conservation society. And I noticed that a lot of their followers often sent them poems and essays and art. So I offered to create a charity anthology for them. You know, they posted a call for submissions, and people just sent me their artwork, their poems, their stories. And it became a published book, and it was one of our best works yet. But somehow in the process, 5 other people asked if I could publish their novels or novellas.
Okay.
And at that point, I was like, I just self-publish stuff really, but I can try. And somehow Thurston Howl Publications came up out of that.
All right. Is it a one-man job, or how many people do you have? Or let's ask, how many hands do you have working on it?
You're not going to believe this, but it's about 30.
Oof.
Wow.
Yeah, busy operation.
We're very unusual for a furry publisher. And yeah, we have a full cover art team, a team of just editors, a team of proofreaders, beta readers, copy editors, just the works. We have everything.
Nice.
All right. Sheesh. That's still a lot of people. Okay,
yeah, it's very professional for a furry house. I know a lot of the major ones, even Silk Wolf and Fur Planet, have maybe 5 people working there, maybe 10. But it works for us. So, yeah.
Okay, I mean, I saw that you, or at least Doge at one point told me that, like, a lot of the work that you do, with your publishing and actually also your writing has to do with more sort of liberal perspectives of things. Granted, you're in Tennessee, so I mean it's very conservative there. Like, how do you what exactly do you do with that? Like, how do you look at, say, words have lost me.
Apparently.
Well, I mean, it's
Thank you.
despite despite being despite being headquartered in Tennessee,
Mhm.
most of our subs really aren't coming from here.
Mm.
I mean,
Mhm.
we get queries from California. We're publishing 2 European novels this year,
Mhm.
um, so we really publish everywhere. I think we've only published like 2 authors from Tennessee. Yeah.
Well, yeah,
Hmm.
I can imagine with the internet. I mean, your marketplace is no longer bound to your physical location, not for a long while.
Absolutely. Right.
Hmm. Okay. um. So with the publishing, obviously you've mentioned like several other publishing houses out there, and like, there's no bad blood between anybody on that side? Because I mean, like, one of our South African furries is also, oddly enough, working, being put into an anthology by Fred Patton. He mentioned this to me as I was trying to speak to him a little bit.
Oh.
And yeah, I mean, like, his publisher is apparently also getting out there. I can't remember. Is it Howl? I'm not sure. Did
Which
I?
anthology is it?
I.
We don't know.
Um, very, very good answer. Let me actually see here. I know that, what's it? Yakumalan.
This is Outlook,
Goal.
right?
Goal Publications. Based in
Oh, I know
Connecticut.
Gold.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, the owner of Gold Publications is one of our editors, actually.
Huh. Small world.
Nice.
Um, yeah, somehow we contract a lot of people from other houses. So I wouldn't say, at least with THP, that we have any bad blood with other publishers at this point.
Mhm.
I know Weasel Press, who's in Texas. He and I partner up on a lot of projects,
Okay.
which is great.
So, like, with the field that you're in right now, how exactly did you sort of do? Was it just the fact that you started writing and wanted to publish and decided that you wanted to publish for yourself first that got you interested in that field, or were there other
Um,
extenuating circumstances?
well, to be honest, I'm one of those cases where I try to get published elsewhere, but just got
Mm-hmm.
rejection after rejection. So I just had to do it myself.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah, and then the publishing house just kind of fell into my lap. So.
Okay. And I mean, you mentioned that obviously you also lecture as an English lecturer.
Yes.
That seems to be sort of like a prevalent thing amongst publishers. I mean, Tempo with Sofa Wolf, he lectures creative writing. I think Jaffa's also somehow connected with teaching, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I, I want to start a publishing house in South Africa, but that's a very, very, very far-fetched thing for me right now. Like for furry novels and things like that. But I mean, like, it seems like English people, or not English people, but languages people seem to sort of move towards, doing publishing, and it's technically so far out of our field. I mean, how do we deal, or how do you deal with the day-to-day, or how did you deal with the day-to-day, I guess, pressures of publishing?
It's interesting just because of how much growth changes the difficulty of the job.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when it started out, it was just a one-man job. And then within a few months, we had enough queries to need 3 people, and then 5, and now we get 1 or 2 queries a week. So we have to handle all of that. But it's interesting always comparing teaching at the college level with running a publishing house too.
Mm-hmm.
I often find myself telling students, why do you have 2 spaces between sentences? Something that most English professors would never care about.
Huh. But why do they have 2 spaces?
Because in the South, there's still teachers who teach keyboarding who still follow the old typewriter rules.
Oh boy.
and that's still commonly taught, unfortunately.
Are they from the Stone Age? Like, what
Pretty
the
much.
bullshit? No, what? This
It's
gets,
so
oh
common
my
though.
god.
It's not rare. We even get novel queries that do that have two spaces between sentences. It's so irksome.
These people are what, like born in the 70s, raised in the 80s, and then apparently double spacing is still a thing in 2017. Sorry. Uh-uh.
Easy, China.
Angry.
Ja, nee, kijk.
Ja, oh man, lost my eye. All right. So I actually have a question from the crowd here, from Adolf, oddly enough. He says, he asks, how do you see the market for short story anthologies? And also asks, do you think that the market is actually being saturated?
That's a good question, actually. So recently, as of this past fall, we started really heavily getting into the market for short stories. We started doing our first major furry anthology called Seven Deadly Sins. And this year, I think we have planned like 8 different anthologies. It's crazy. But yeah, it's like the furry market is just perfect for short stories right now.
Okay.
Yeah, I definitely encourage that.
When you do publish for short stories and things like that in anthologies, where exactly does the profit at all at any given point go to the authors themselves? How does that percentage work?
Sure. So it definitely varies, whether it's a short story or whether it's an actual novel. But typically with novels, we usually give the authors 50% of the profit. And the rest of it goes to the various staff that actually worked on the book.
Okay.
With short stories, since we're still a young publishing house, we're still working on that kind of payment. So far, our payment system has just been the author gets a free contributor's copy.
Okay.
As far, yeah. We're hoping to be able to change that, hopefully this year, to be able to actually give authors a payment per word.
Okay. Per word?
Yes, it's usually like it's either a penny per word or half a penny per word. That's the market standard for the furry houses, anyways.
Okay, that's 13 cents. Lol. Sorry.
13 South African cents.
Yes, I've also made a strange reference back to a book that I read in university called 13 Cents.
Do not know
The author apparently committed suicide. Jeez, I don't know how many. This is actually a genuine question. Like, I mean, while you were studying literature and things like that, how many of the authors that you actually did in your grad, how many of them actively committed suicide? Because I'm on like 10 by now.
Not many on my end because I stick with the early modern lit.
Okay.
Which isn't as morbid. Yeah, I specialize in Shakespeare and John Milton, so I usually get to be immune from that stuff.
Okay, because we were going with Sylvia Plath and Inga Achenbach.
Oh yeah, that'd be
Virginia Woolf.
Yeah, that gets depressing quickly.
Yeah. When it comes to like, I mean, like you did sort of that sort of would I call it a writing style? Seminal works in essence, like back in the 1500s, 1600s, as like writing was becoming more open to the public and things like that. But do you think that the writing today has gotten better or worse through the years?
I think it's definitely changed for one. I'm typically not what's called a modernist. If you give me something that's in the 19th or 20th century, I'll probably not like it.
Okay.
Much to my partner's chagrin. But I'm really enjoying postmodernist works, though. Stuff like Mark Danielewski, or Lolita's delightful. I'm usually liking the newer stuff that's like 21st century. It's usually not too bad.
Okay. I don't know. Like, I mean, like when it comes to major works for me, I've found that writing has become stunted and completely and utterly banal. If anything, I mean, we're looking at books that come out that become massive sort of popular hits, circa,
Right.
you know, 50 Shades of Grey, the whole, like everybody's
Right.
going into that kind of scene right
Girl
now.
with the
And I
dragon
mean,
tattoo.
yeah, exactly. You're looking at
Yeah.
actually, you know what? Girl with the Dragon Tattoo was actually not bad. It wasn't badly written. The movie was graphic as all hell. And honestly, I think the
Right.
movie did a lot more justice to the book than most other things actually have. But I mean, you're looking at novels that are coming out there, and people are like going like, "These are our literary like gods at this point." You're sitting there going like, "Seriously?"
This is a crying
Like,
shame.
I mean, you're telling me that the author for 50 Shades of Grey can be in any way connected to you know, somebody like Charlotte Bronte, for instance. There's no fucking way. I mean, you're looking at
Right.
the beginning steps of feminism, the way that is moving forward, and the way that like as females, Jane Eyre is possibly one of the most powerful of their time. And then you're moving to a
Oh, sure.
woman who is
Has a loose
the
understanding of the
most
BDSM culture.
actually it's not even that. It's just her character's flat. She has no sort of discernible you know, characteristics that make her unique, and that's problematic because, I mean, how exactly do you necessarily turn this uh, wisp of a woman into anything that the later books are supposed to be going on about? Like you read the first book and you're like, you're weak-willed, you have no power whatsoever. How is it possible that you are able to do what you're supposed to do coming in the next 2 or 3 books? Absolutely no way. Bella doesn't change, for fuck's sakes. They don't. They are the same
Right.
people from when they started to the end, completely indecisive about everything, yet somehow they win. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't. I mean, there's a defining change in Jane Eyre that does not exist in any of the books that we have these days. Yeah, Harry Potter changes, says Raccoon. Whoop-de fucking do. Sorry.
Don't be that mean.
It's don't like these are not children's books. It's like children's books are different. Yes, they get older. Exactly. That's pretty much it. You're taking a 30-year-old woman, and you're saying just be the same, and they'll change for you. Fuck that.
I think
Make
feminism's
your
come full
change. Do
circle.
what you need to do. Hey?
I think feminism might have come full circle.
Yeah.
Is this,
It's a strange world we live in.
yeah. If this is the kind of stuff that hits the mass market and attracts all the attention and all
Yeah.
the money, then like I weep for this planet.
Well,
Just we.
if it's any
Yeah.
consolation, though, popular culture typically doesn't define what becomes a classic. I mean, with Shakespeare and Milton, for example, they were not extremely popular in their times. They became classics centuries afterward.
Yeah, because Shakespeare, what's the word? He wrote in non-standard English, for goodness sakes. He was theeing and thouing everywhere when everybody was going, well, you're talking to higher ups, you should be youing instead of theeing and thouing.
Right.
That's an amazing chapter that de Saussure actually covers, in that the reason why we use the term you nowadays is because there was a whole group of people who were very militant about theeing and thouing, and you have to thee and thou all across the board instead of youing, because you is the equivalent, or the English equivalent of, at least at that time, of our South African or the Afrikaans I, for instance.
Oh yeah.
And that you don't have to, yeah.
Like the closest thing to a royal plural like royal salute that there is.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, like everybody's like, screw these guys, we're not joining them. We're just gonna you because we don't want to thee and thou because we don't want to seem like them. And literally that is how it changed. It is the stupidest thing to ever have happened under the sun, but it's one of the most fun things to actually think about how language changed.
Oh, class
Absolutely.
warfare. Never change.
Hmm.
I mean, it's all about social
Okay,
class.
I've
I
got
assume. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, and that's the other problematic part is that we don't hit it head on anymore. It's problematic that we don't hit it on anymore. So, there's another question from Adolf, and I'm fine with him asking as many questions as he wants to, since he's a writer. So it's his prerogative, I guess. He asks, are there any trends in submissions for furry, particularly irritating ones, is his caveat.
Oh, that's so much fun.
Good.
So much fun. Oh my God. Okay. Irritating trends. I haven't seen too many myself. The worst is often just incredibly novice submissions that aren't taken seriously by the writers. Sometimes I get an email that has no subject, just no message, just an attached story that's not even proofread.
Nice.
I'm just like, what do you want me to do with this? Sometimes I don't even know which anthology it's meant for.
No.
Yeah, do you want me to file it? I'll file it under file 13.
Under the file that we never open.
It's not really a file that nobody ever opens. It's the dustbin.
Huh.
There is an interesting story though. Sofa-Wolf editor Dark End last fall posted a list of things not to do in your erotica, things to just not do because he's tired of the shit.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a author who actually is probably listening to this podcast actually, who decided to write a story that used all of those things.
Oh, lacquer.
As just a satire, which we found delightful, and we're actually talking to the author about it. But it's just crazy how often people don't think about the genre, what's cliche, what's overdone, and what's just flat out not acceptable.
Or what's just a copy of Kyle Gold?
That too.
Yeah, I mean, it is, and that is possibly a question that I want to get into. Will there ever be a point that, like, and yes, I mean, one of the things that we cover very, very heavily in third year lit is the idea of intertextuality, of course. And it's strange that is there ever a point that we're going to homogenize our stories to like one specific point, or do you think that there will always be sort of newer stories out there? I mean, like, say, let's look at erotica, for instance. I mean, you have your Mills and Boon typewriters. You have your, 50 Shades of Grey typewriters.
Sure.
Like, is there a position that you can actually start going, like, you're going to be categorized in this position over here because it seems a lot like that, even though the story is somehow different from the previous one that you just wrote? This is exactly the same as your other one, except your characters are now, instead of two foxes, it's a cat and a jackal.
Sure.
I mean, how do you distinguish? Maybe this will be a good question. How do you distinguish between good literature and bad literature?
Ooh, that's a fun question right there, isn't it? For us, for THP anyways, our main definition of good literature is in its evocation. If a fantasy story mystifies us, if a horror story terrifies us, if an erotica story arouses us, that is good literature. Literature that does what it seeks out to do. That's usually our definition.
Okay. Another question from the gallery here. as a publishing house, would there be a little bit of advice for going forward to authors who want to get into writing? What is the right way to approach it? What makes it easier for a publishing house to work with it, decide on the piece itself, and to have it taken as a serious submission?
Well, the main thing, first of all, is just read submission guidelines. It's so irksome when authors just don't do that. I usually don't ask for this really huge formal query, especially for a short story. It could be as simple a message as, Dear Thurston Howl, here's my story for your consideration for this anthology. Thanks, name. And that's fine. I just need some basic information. For a novel query, I like it to be a little more formal. And you can just Google ways to make a query letter. And there's no one right way, but there's lots of wrong ways.
As one could possibly only guess. One of the other questions that because I'm not a writer as per se, I'm more a poet. Is there, because I mean there's one thing that I've noticed from, say, Penguin and from all the big publishers. A lot of them just don't like poetry anymore. Poetry in all essence is almost becoming a dying art. It feels like, and I don't know, like that's become a homogenized thing where the vast majority of poets are white, between 16 and 18, and write about how shitty life is. And it aside from a different use of words most of the time, like how does one become a good poet anymore? Like how does that even sort of, like, I mean, we had people like Inga Achenbach, we had people like Sylvia Plath, we had people who wrote these amazing pieces of poetry. If you look at Allen Ginsberg, for instance, but it seems like with Allen Ginsberg and his death, poetry almost died with him.
Yeah, there are some poets who have seemed to rise the past couple of decades. I'm curious about which ones will stay marked in the corpus of poetic literature in 10 years from now. But I don't think it's dead yet. I think it's problematized just because of the ease with which anyone can write and publish a poem. But I do think there's still hope for it.
You say it's easy to publish a poem. Not that I've actively been trying.
Well, define published.
Oh, I mean more of like you could post it on Facebook. You could post it on your blog.
Yeah, but it's how does one even get noticed as a poet?
The big thing is make sure you're doing readings. Find your local coffee shop. Do that. Sign up for local poetry conferences.
And what if you're incredibly shy?
Then you're SOL.
Well, yeah, that's harder. You can't. I know there are some poets who actually get really strong noticeability through having a YouTube channel.
Okay.
And just doing readings on there, because that works a lot more for more introverted types right there. And if it's a good video, strong quality, that works well.
Huh. Okay, cool.
That gave you something
Ivy
to chew on.
poetry, like readings, is gonna be fucking amazing. I'm just gonna go fucking kill myself. Okay, so I mean, you've been in the fandom for what, the past 4 years now. Yeah, and one of the questions that I sort of like have, obviously, is, in the 4 years that you've been part of the fandom, do you think that it's changed at all? Because I know that there's a large amount of rumblings going on, sort of in the deeper underbelly of like the fandom as a whole. There's a lot of what would you call it? Unwarranted anger towards certain people for no apparent reason, aside from they don't like them anymore, or anything like that. I mean, like maybe we'll look at something like Fursonas, which I'm not necessarily sure is. I don't know how objective that is. I've not watched it myself yet, but I've read a review that has damn good, oddly enough. But I mean, like it obviously is it's critical of Uncle Kage. It's critical of a whole bunch of other things of how we've been or started reacting to things. And I mean, like if your work with Mr. Patton has got anything to do with it. I mean, he has a PhD, doesn't he?
I don't recall that.
Okay. He does have a master's in library sciences, I
Right.
think. As far as I remember. I was reading his blog the other day. I can't remember if he got a doctorate or not. I'm hoping that he gets an honorary at some point, like from MIT, because yes.
Right.
But yeah, so like there's this weird sort of vibe that seems to be going around quite a lot. And I mean, we see it in America, we see it in England, we see it in South Africa even. I'm not necessarily sure about Australia because it's Australia. But I mean, like, is that a change that has been happening like almost recently, or do you think that's something that's been around for a lot longer?
I've definitely noticed it more often recently, but I think that also has to do with the fact that I'm still fairly new to the fandom.
Yeah.
So I think I notice things more now just because I'm more involved in the culture. Um, but a lot of the things you mentioned, such as the critics of Uncle Kage, the persona-specific critiques, things like that, I've definitely noticed. It seems to have changed in the past few years, definitely, compared to what it was maybe 10, 20 years ago. As to why that is, I have no idea. I think it has a lot to do with just the maybe the empowerment of internet culture, maybe. Just the
It has
idea
become
that,
a lot stronger recently, hasn't it? It
Everyone has
seems
a
to have.
platform.
Of course, yeah. No, Scratch is right. Everyone has a platform. And if your platform is loud enough.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Sometimes I
Okay.
wonder whether all of that was such a good idea. I mean, in retrospect, being able to give
Yeah, look, I
everyone
mean,
a
let's
megaphone is dangerous.
let's not go for net neutrality on this one. All the loudest voices must be silenced.
Mm, no, no, like I don't know. You can freedom of speech is there for a reason, but yeah, you can say what you want, but you're not free from the consequences of what you say.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
The problem is, I guess, with the internet at present is that it's so easy to get stuck in an echo chamber.
Oh, so easy.
And I mean, like, and the thing is that you have so many other people, like, giving several other opinions, but you pick and choose which ones you really want to listen to. You're kind of sitting there going like, no, I don't like your opinion. I don't like your opinion either. It's too conservative. That one's a bit too liberal for me. I don't I want to be middle of the road, but I still want to be angry about something. So they'll find something like PewDiePie, for instance, and they'll attack him about his apparent anti-Semitism and his close ties with Milo Yiannopoulos, because American like news is the funniest thing to read on earth at present. Um, because the platform has been set by a person who is so connected to the internet, I'm talking about Donald Trump here, that it's difficult to not just opinionate the way that he does. He's the president.
Right.
Accents have changed because of presidents. Like in America itself, I mean, there's still a state. I'm always wondering whether it's Iowa or
Ohio.
Ohio. Yeah, but it's a state that has three different distinct like accents, specifically because of what they called the linguistic flow throughout the country, people moving between one area and the next, and that like presidents literally affected the way that you spoke because people wanted to speak like their president. I'm just imagining a whole bunch of like alt-right people beginning to speak with the word huge, and I'm just cringing almost immediately because there
Yeah,
goes
me
the
too.
English language.
Yep, that hurts.
Yeah. Goodbye,
No, no
adjectives.
offense to people from New York, but yeah, huge is just not acceptable.
Yeah.
Anyway, so geez, no other questions at this point. Ractus the Rat apparently blames Brexit for Trump, which I don't think is a
That's
bad
fair.
thing.
Yeah. So you wanted to say?
Raccoon actually mentions that there wasn't. Sorry, go right ahead, Hal.
Oh, what?
No, you wanted to say something about, yeah. It sounded like you were scoffing or wanting to make a point during the Brexit caused Trump statement.
Nope, not at all.
Okay.
Nope.
Okay. Do not want to go there.
Let's not open up that can of
Okay.
worms.
So, just to clarify on that last point,
Sure.
things have changed within the furry fandom, but we're not necessarily sure whether it's for bad or good.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's complicated for sure, right? I mean, it's the furry fandom has definitely been increasing. You can tell just by con numbers alone, or the number of cons.
Yeah.
Not just participation. You can tell by the wealth of art on FA, the stories on SoFurry. There's definitely an increase in the number of fans, which is great.
And
but we also have. Oh, go ahead.
No, go for it. We also have.
I mean, I was just gonna. But we also have this increase in what can be loosely called furry drama, what can be called higher criticisms of, I don't want to say older practices, but just things that have defined the fandom in a lot of ways, such as the fursonas, people such as Uncle Kage or Fred Patton, who've been in the fandom since its dawning days.
Yeah. I mean, Fred Patton more so than even Uncle Kage, for instance. I mean, that's
absolutely.
I mean, you're looking at a man who, and I mean, like just over the past 2 weeks that I've been like doing a little bit of research and things like that, I have absolute respect for this person, and yet we've come to a point where we want to criticize him for not changing his ways, but the thing is that he's literally been the person who practically wrote the book on changing your perspective on things, on being able to, I mean, I was reading his daily blog, for instance, just because I had time, and he goes to his wife's place, his sister's place, to watch. What's that anime now? It's the one with that weird little cat thing, with the whiskers. He's sort of like a gun for hire type guy. Always gets in like weirdly sexually orientated like positions.
No idea.
Goodness, I'm hoping that the crowd will be able to sort me out on this one. Well, Raccoon obviously asks, are people criticizing Fred, for instance? That's. Mark says that there are people who do that.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised at this point with the fandom's growth, as we've talked about. But I haven't personally seen it, thankfully. I'm not sure I could keep a level head if I saw that, probably.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd want to fly over to America and kick somebody's teeth in, honestly.
Yes.
I mean, you're looking at a man who, again, like I said, he literally wrote the book on being able to change society and how to change society, and has been changing himself, irrespective of whether the fact that he's been bedridden for like the last couple of years. That, for me, shows dedication. That's the kind of dedication that is sometimes, I think, necessary within the furry fandom, because without this kind of dedication, nobody really stands up and does anything. It's something that we've seen within our fandom as well, is that it does become, and what's worse, actually, I'm gonna put out a personal gripe here, that people will attack you on something, for instance, vehemently at that, about what you're doing. And then when they try doing something else and they get attacked for it, they say, but you can't just do that. I mean, you can't just attack somebody for what they've been trying to do. You know,
Yeah.
people took initiative. And if you didn't take initiative, that's your fucking own fault. And yet
Right.
you attack these people for it.
Honestly, it's always been like that. A consumer feels very comfortable criticizing a creator, but when they become a creator, or like, because it's safe, no one likes getting criticized or unnecessarily criticized. It takes a very open mind to be like accepting of criticism and being able to separate the message and the messenger.
Yeah.
And consumers don't run that risk because they inherently don't make anything; they just consume, and that's safer.
Right. Yeah.
And it's always been like that.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if at some point you come under fire for just being a publishing house. It'll happen because somebody's going to be upset about something, and that's just how it's going to be.
Right.
It sometimes it just doesn't make sense. Honestly, it doesn't help to be able to do that. And I mean, we've had these arguments on countless points, but how do we change that mindset? I mean, like, you say that you're listening to other people, you say that you're doing this, and then people just say, no, you weren't. And you kind of sit there going like, but yes, I was, but you know what? It's your fucking opinion. Go for it. And I mean, can you be angry at that? I can't be angry at that. It honestly, it wastes a little bit too much of my time sometimes to be angry about it, at least. But yeah, I mean, so the fandom it's a strange beast, I think.
Absolutely.
That seems to constantly change its own persona most of the time.
Oh, absolutely.
Right now, it's in the Sparkle Dog phase.
And the Sparkle Dog phase has probably been lasting since 1997, honestly.
Probably.
Early 90s was the emo phase.
Oh, right, because directly after that, people decided to phase back into the 1970s, but then became fucking hipsters.
Mm-hmm.
So, color everywhere.
Oh, so much color.
Yeah. Don't judge me for putting puke green with puke yellow.
With neon pink.
Oh, God, why?
Because my mind works in pictures.
Yeah?
Oh, I mean, I was going to say, it's like, I've been so surprised with some of the emergent species combinations the past 4 years. I can tell it's a new trend, but still amazes me. I mean, recently I've seen a zombie jackal gator. I've seen plant fusion personas.
Do tell.
It gets interesting.
Well, I mean, that probably explains the Protea. Like our cricket mascot is literally a lion with a Protea mane.
Oh, right. I forgot about that.
Yeah. It's one of the strangest things that I've seen around, but hey, it exists. And it doesn't look half bad.
That's adorkable.
I'm not going to mention that one, but interesting comment from Rakuin, just about like. Hey.
I saw that.
Yeah. Next time people will complain about their specific hybrid is just drop down list. Like, honestly, if that's the case, just give 4 different drop downs and hope that works.
Yeah.
No, but no, I wanted to be 5 characters. Oh my god. Just make up your goddamn mind.
This is what happens when you give people too much power. You give people too many options.
No, it's not. Just give them the options. Let them write down their own options. Let them be free. Don't drop down boxes.
But don't expect bespoke treatment just because you decided to be like, I don't know, an angel dragon jet fighter with fucking vines growing out of it.
And not to mention like helicopter tendencies.
Yeah.
Because the helicopter tendencies are terrifyingly important, and if you don't assume that they have helicopter tendencies, then they will attack you with
Ironically.
fucking fluffy bears. And then they're also vegan. Like vegan, definitely.
Oh yeah. I'm
Sorry,
inherently
you're not
against
vegan,
veganism.
I'm going to take that silence as a possible yes.
What's that?
we were wondering whether you're vegan so that we can continue with vegan.
Continue right.
Well, I'm pescatarian actually, which means I can eat fish but not other kinds of meat.
Okay.
Okay.
That's fine.
Yeah, not
That's-
vegan though.
Okay. Pescatarian.
Yeah.
That honestly sounds like a completely new church.
That sounds like Episcopalian.
In a way.
I can only eat Pescopalians, but I can only eat them on Sundays.
I love it.
I'm sorry.
Why isn't that in the drop-down menu?
Yeah. Oh boy. Advolf asks, Tennessee is dry, which is weird because you guys have Tennessee whiskey there. But what's it like being in a dry state?
I don't really know. I drink wine all the time. I don't know. I'm not big into the alcohol culture of the state. So I'm not sure I can even comment on that, even living here for 24 years. I can't really comment on it.
Okay.
How does it work though? Like, how does being a dry state work? Can you get alcohol? Like, what's the limitations on it?
I mean, I think, I'm trying to remember, because I really don't buy alcohol that much. I think you can get alcohol any day of the week except for Sunday, I think.
Welcome to our entire country. Well, not anymore these days.
Yeah. Yeah, you can buy alcohol on Sunday up until 1 o'clock.
No.
Or 3 o'clock, depending on which place you're going to.
Yeah, Pick and Pay here actually, I think, keeps it going until like 4. They're doing the Lord's work.
Yeah, the Lord's work. Sorry. I'm having a fun time here already. So, your inspiration for writing, where did you get that? Sorry.
I would say I probably started about in 4th or 5th grade, actually.
Okay.
We had like this daily journal we had to write in a class then. And for like 3 weeks in a row, I was like the teacher's favorite writer. And I was like, oh, it's this easy? I can do this. I'll write a novel.
Nice.
And I think in 8th grade, I finished the first draft of my first novel, which I kid you not, it was on copy paper. It was about 300 pages. I wrote in about size 40 font, so I was able to fit about 20, 30 words a chapter, handwritten, with illustrations, no less. So when I typed it out, I was disappointed to find out it was about 10 pages long. But lo and behold, my freshman year of college, I actually retyped the whole thing as an actual novel, and it was published 2 years ago.
Congrats.
No shit.
Yep.
Huh.
That's cool.
Well then, that's actually really awesome.
I'm proud. It's actually become I just finished the 3rd novel of that series a couple months ago.
Okay. So Mog actually asks now this on the first stream side. Only a few dry countries. Is the entire state of Tennessee dry, or are there like certain sections of Tennessee are they dry?
I think it's county specific, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's correct. I think it's county specific.
You just happen to be in the one county that, like, I could just imagine you're like quickly crossing the border to the only liquor store.
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of liquor stores here. It's great. It's even in the dry counties. There's probably tons of liquor stores. Um, one
Then
thing
how
you
do you
will learn
count it
about,
as a dry county?
I don't know. I'm only concerned with those kinds of laws if they affect my coffee drinking.
So
But one thing you'll notice if you ever visit the South is you'll notice these two billboards that are always right beside each other, no matter where you are in Tennessee. One will say, "Go to church," and the second one right behind it will say, "Go to our adult gift store."
nice.
Yep, fun
Be
stuff.
pious and sexy at the same time.
Absolutely.
Buy ankle-high skirts. Sorry. Oh. Oh, yeah. Okay, that's just amazing analogy. I'm happy with that.
Yep.
Welcome to Tennessee.
Yep, exactly.
Something nuns having too much fun.
I have a very dirty joke about that actually, and it's about two nuns on a tandem bicycle in Venice.
Ah, yeah, I know that one. Halt.
Yep.
Halt.
I'll tell you about it just after the podcast, and
Sure thing.
I'll tell the rest of the listeners around about 11 o'clock, because that's past 10 in Germany.
It's past my bedtime.
Yeah, it's yeah, fine. Like, it's not like I'm working until 12 o'clock and you get to go to bed.
You have the option to not.
I don't technically.
Mm-hmm.
I like giving music to the people.
Then that's then suffer in silence.
Fuck you. Okay. All right. So with you being involved in the furry fandom for the past 4 years, has it changed you at all, sort of like on a personality level?
Yes, it's hard to measure exactly because that's also when I came out of the closet. So I've been experiencing LGBT culture at the same time I've been experiencing furry culture, which have lots of intersectionalities. I'd say a big part of the furry fandom's shifts on my personality is, well, for one, my house is now decorated with lots of animals and furry art, number one.
He now also has a very, very large collection of bad dragons.
Not large yet.
Holy shit, I did not expect that.
The correct
Carry on.
The correct answer to that is I can neither confirm nor deny my bad dragon collection.
Of course. That's what I meant to say. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, my partner is furry too, so that makes things a little bit easier. And I mean, most of my day is spent working on furry publishing stuff, so my mind is always on the subject apparently. And that means I also have a million tabs on my computer because you have to have like your Slack chat, I have to have a forum up, I have to have Twitter up. My Google Chrome is tired of. It's like, I know you're a furry. You can quit searching already. You know.
All right. So this move to Michigan, it's including your partner, yeah?
Yes, it is.
Good. Because long distance relationships bad.
Yes,
anyway, moving on. Yeah. Go.
Oh, I mean, I was just going to say, I mean, for me personally, it's almost impossible to do that. I mean, I know long distance relationships work for a lot of people, and that's wonderful, but it's just not my cup of tea.
I have the opposite perception of that. Like, literally, between the close people in my life that I've asked or who have had experiences in long distance relationships, 0% have worked out. So
I'm part of the 0%.
Yes, many people are.
I had what I could have considered a partner in freaking California for fucking 5 months.
Yeah.
That was fun.
That
I was head over heels. He, I don't know. Anyway, moving on from that one. Life
Okay.
issues, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
So
Okay.
when it comes to making a career out of the fandom, and I mean, this has been a question that's been sort of bandied around very often within our own fandom, and
Mhm.
so I mean, like, is it our fandom is small here in South Africa. I mean, we're looking at
Sure.
of the actives, probably around about 80 to 100 at best, possibly
Mhm.
150, and this is like strewn across like 5 different mediums and things like that. So
Sure.
it'd be difficult to like create like any kind of money within South Africa.
Mhm.
But and exchange rates screw us over daily.
Hmm.
But I mean, like in America, like how easy is it, I guess, to make a living out of it?
Well, I'd say there are three main venues. Um, One is if you're a furry artist. I know there's some, probably not many, but there are some who can actually make a living just off their art and fandom, um, which is great. And I envy those people tremendously. Um, the second way is probably through the writing community. It's a lot harder to make a living uh, through writing in the fandom, but it is possible. Especially if you're turning out novels, if you're turning out stories, it's possible, or at least to make what could be minimum wage, essentially. And the third way is actually still emerging, and that's actually through academia.
Hmm.
If you've heard of the International Anthropomorphic Research Project,
Yep, we
they're a group of
actually
scholars.
we
Yeah.
had an interview with
Luca.
Nuka
Dr.
Oh,
Luca.
okay. Nuka's
pretty
wonderful.
recently. Yeah, no,
No,
he's
yeah,
amazing. I obviously thought that Nuka was a girl for a very, very long period of time.
I did
And
too. I did too. And
yes,
he corrected
I'm not
me
the only
quite
one.
quickly. Yeah, but it's me too. Yeah, we've actually worked with him on. We published a lot of their stuff recently, but I know they're all PhD holders working in the fandom. Even as an English professor here, I've actually taught furry literature fairly often. I've taught it in my own classes. I was actually offered to be a guest lecturer at a university across the state, where I just
Hmm.
lectured about Powell Gold's Waterways.
Okay.
Um, and I actually had to stock it in their bookstores. It was an amazing experience in a furry book in the textbook section.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
That is actually pretty awesome, and that obviously helps him and I think like and maybe that's the one thing that we seem to miss is that there's always an opportunity to work together rather than against within the fandom. I mean, like
Absolutely.
you have a publishing house, other people write. Some writers who don't think that they're getting like enough attention from one side to another side, say from Kyle Gold. I mean, like he's damn busy. To say the least. It's the same thing about tempo, but I mean, he always makes time for us to come and chit chat with us for a while. And I mean, it's good to have like a whole bunch of maybe even just either state specific or trans, you know, trans, group specific sort of like literature and things like that out there that people sort of specify in or work together with. I mean, you're already showing that you're working pretty much across the board with practically every publisher out there, which is absolutely amazing. And again, it's that kind of mentality that I think that we either need to bring back or we need to just remind people that, hey, we're all just people. We're all just trying to get by. Nobody's trying to outdo the other.
It's not
Right.
a zero-sum game.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of our best publications to date has been a book called Furries Among Us, um,
Mm.
which is this collection of essays by members of the fandom. We had the cover art done by Ruckus. Sabretooth Ermine did author illustrations. We had Kyle Gold in there. We had Fred Patton in there. We had the International Anthropomorphic Research Project in there. All these big names. And each one just kind of writes an essay on what they think one of the most important aspects of the fandom is. And kind of the reason we took that approach to one of the fandom's first nonfiction books was just to show that the fandom is all about community. That you can be in the fandom for X amount of years and still see it so differently than someone else. It's so diverse.
Hmm.
Okay.
Right? Yeah.
That's very good commentary. I'm quite happy that that's something that we can actually start building on. And I mean, if it's been something that I guess what the podcast has been attempting to do, at least what I've openly been trying to do, is that like, I mean, we've had people from Brazil, from Canada, from America, from Europe, from Australia, and literally all we do is we get together, we talk shit, and that's it. I mean, like, that's what we do best. Scratch and I are very good at talking shit, and we love talking shit with other people. At least I do. I'm not sure. Scratch. You
I'm
good
okay
with
with
talking shit?
Yep. Okay. With
Okay,
it.
good. You just there we go. Yay.
Well, I'm here, aren't I?
I'm feeling the love, man.
What do you want me to say, that I'm not held at gunpoint every time we do this?
Well, I'm not there to physically hold you to gunpoint. I'm just putting that out there.
Yeah, I know. Fucking Rufus has been acting up the whole time. Tell whatever he's on, tell him to like half the dose. You know what I mean.
I don't.
You know what I mean.
Whoa. Okay. Don't put out those sultry tones. So one of the things that I do want to actually also speak about is, so your work within, and that's the point that I was trying to get to earlier. Your work within, say, like the LGBT scene. I remember Doge mentioned that you have a lot of work that you're actually putting into the LGBT scene in general, and I'd love to hear a little bit about that, maybe.
Sure. So how do I start? Well, I know recently I've been presenting at a few local LGBT conferences held at universities. I've taught a lot of LGBT literature. I've given seminars and such. And often my own research, just in academia, merges sexuality with even animal studies, which is always delightful. About 3 years ago, I was diagnosed as HIV positive. So that means I also try to have a large outreach to that community as well, and try to, promote safe sex practices and just HIV awareness in general. We try to do that as a house even, and just be okay with talking about controversial LGBT topics.
Okay. And okay, sorry, I can't listen to that when I'm trying to actually speak. So like when it comes to that kind of stuff, like she said, firstly, my condolences. I mean, like in South Africa, obviously that's very, very big. It's a big issue.
Sure, it is here too. Tennessee is I think Tennessee is number 2 in the country for that.
No.
For HIV infection.
What? Is the other one also a southern state?
I can't remember honestly, which is bad.
I mean, like I don't know. Like it'd be interesting if that were the case. Depending on the type of thought patterns that go through, and I mean, like obviously with these kinds of talks, I know that that the person in California that I used to talk to quite often, he was talking about PrEP the entire time, and how PrEP is, the like thing that you can do and use when you just keep on saying, no, look, I'm HIV positive, but I can use this, and you're not going to get AIDS, and that's going to be absolutely amazing. And I can still be as irresponsible as I want to be, and it burns me up a little bit inside, because the thing is that it's always about safe sex, irrespective of whether you've been with your partner for as long as possible. And mistakes happen, things happen like that, and
absolutely.
being young is another thing as well. But I mean, if you're, say, 21 and you go into a gay club in California and people are like, yeah, no, don't worry, I'm on PrEP. You're not going to get HIV. You're not going to get HIV, but what about the other, like, 700 different strains of, like, of
Right.
diseases that you can get as well? It doesn't stop
Right.
that from happening. The next thing you know, you've got
Exactly.
it doesn't happen.
Right. I mean, I know in my case, I actually, despite a lot of American stigmas about HIV, I actually contracted it from a partner I had for a year who had lied about his status.
Yeah.
In fact, he'd been positive for about 8 years, it turns out. He had known about it. I know my new partner, we've been together about a year now. He's on PrEP, and I'm on my medication. So that makes that a lot, makes it negligible at this point.
Okay. I mean,
Yeah.
but, and there's also this growing group of people that I know that my flatmate at one point told me about, where people actively go out to infect other
Yes.
people.
Yes,
I mean,
they do.
it's, I don't know, I would consider it to be either malicious or it's just not right. It shouldn't be done. And
Oh,
then,
absolutely.
I mean, and sometimes they don't even like it. You go to a party where this is done. Great, absolutely fine. If you want to get it, go for it. But
Yes.
don't go to a person who is unassuming of your status and you get them to go home with you and you do whatever the hell you need to do and you do it because, I don't know, you share the fucking love. What the fuck is that? What is that mentality? Where does that come from?
I mean, I've done limited research on that just because it's so incredibly mortifying. I know there's people that are called chasers, people who actually want what they call the dark gift. And there's pausers, people who intentionally infect others.
How is it a gift?
I have yet to understand that. Whenever I was in the online dating culture scene, I had numerous people tell me, to my horror, I wish I was the one who infected you. I'm like, no, not exactly attractive, you know?
Damn.
That's harsh.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely open about my status for sure, but I'm never exactly proud of it. So,
look, like I said, I mean, mistakes happen. People lie. But
sure.
now, I mean, maybe a little bit of insight on that. Like, I mean, it's. I remember I was having a conversation with somebody, and we were talking about this issue, and they were like, "Hello,
Sure.
I'm HIV positive," and they told me that they got it through one of these parties, and they literally said something along the lines of, "It's a way that I could commit suicide without actually having to put a knife to my wrists. That I could just stop taking the medication and just let go, and within about 2 to 3 months, I'll be gone."
Right.
I mean, it's exactly that. It's really, really depressing, but I mean, it's a strange mentality that I can't get into that. I mean, I've had depressive moods before, but I've never gone or thought as far as to go that far. So these are people who really, really, really desperately need help. And what can you do?
Yeah. It's hard.
Sorry, like, I don't know what it is. Sometimes we take a depressive turn in this kind of stuff, but it's something useful to talk about, I think.
Yeah, and it's something that I find that's often just necessary to talk about. I mean, I know at least in the southern furry community, there seems to be a lot of issues with safe sex, often because these people actually aren't really heavily involved in the LGBT culture scene. So they don't get a lot of the same sex ed that people in that scene do get.
Okay.
That gets a little bit frustrating to me anyways. Not that I've had sex with any furries in I don't even know how long, but my point is just that from what I've heard and said, people around here very often don't use protection. They seem to be thinking that if you're in the furry fandom and you're having intercourse, then you're probably not going to get anything, which is just terrifying.
It's a strange mentality.
Yes. Yes, it is.
Huh. I guess maybe somebody should write a book about it. Like, and I think, oddly enough, somebody who's been in that position, I think hearing what that has to say might actually help, almost.
Right. Yeah.
Is it something?
Why I try.
Sorry.
Hmm?
Go
ahead.
Do you think it has something to do with sort of the stereotypical reluctance and that comes from like being gay in a red state kind of thing? The people aren't active in the LGBT community, and then they skip out on, like you said, the sex ed that we usually get.
Right. And being in a red state means there's not a lot of sex ed anyways.
Yeah, fair point.
A lot of the sex ed is just abstinence.
And that works
which
well.
Which is enormously helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Abstinence. Yay. No, you're not going to hear about it. Just put a fucking pill between your knees. You'll be fine. There's that wonderful song, actually, by... I don't remember what their name was. It was like a two-person... Yes!
The song's called Fuck Me in the Ass Because I Love Jesus.
Exactly that one.
Yeah.
I'm not even sure if we're allowed to say that yet.
It's a song. It's out there. It's on the internet.
Have a look for it if you have to. If you're too young, don't look for it. Maybe you do. It's amazing text ed. For those of you who are looking for
very satire.
Save me!
What are you doing?
Okay. I don't know.
Own up to whatever the hell you're doing.
I actually don't know. I'm owning up. I really didn't know what I was trying to find out to do there. So, when it comes, we asked about your inspiration. We've asked about tips for writing. Do you have any tips for writers?
Tips for writers. I guess I'll give the same tip I give my students. Read your work out loud before you send it. Because very often it's these blatant errors like words missing or the perspective all of a sudden shifts halfway through the story. Just do us all a favor, including yourself, and just read your work out loud before submitting it.
Okay.
Wise words.
Yeah.
Very.
And also find your local community. You know, a lot of writers, especially beginning writers, often have this issue of how do I find the motivation to write? And a lot of it is just find like-minded people. Find a little community, and you can sit in and write with them. You can ask them for help. You can get them to just give you that much-needed push every once in a while. Community helps a lot with writing.
Yeah, another I've seen on like the Google Plus groups. There's a lot of people who ask others to RP with them for book purposes.
Oh, sure. And that's not a bad idea. Definitely, even though it has stigmas in certain circles, role-playing online really does help with story building and such. And as a couple people mentioned on the first stream chat, Furry Writers Guild is also a good community for any furry writers. I think the Slack chat is only for published writers. But you can still join the forums, and that's always a good place too.
Good to know.
Okay. All right. Adrolf is asking like several questions, which is good. He has two more questions, so I'm waiting for a second. But his first one is opinion on e-publishing versus print.
Ooh, that's a fun one. So it seems like all publishers in the fandom seem to differ on their opinions on that, where some publishers prefer e-printing and barely do any print works. Some monopolize on both, or capitalize on both. our house is mostly just print-based. We're trying to get more into ebooks, slowly but surely. It's definitely happening. But we noticed that a lot of furries just like to have that print copy. And a lot of our customers are writers too, so they want that print copy.
Mm.
But we are working on expanding our e-market for sure. It's in the works.
Would you consider publishing poetry? He
Oh,
asks
we
expectantly.
we've published poetry. So we've published poetry so many times. The best house for publishing poetry is definitely Weasel Press, though. They do flat-out poetry anthologies constantly.
Issue is that obviously it has to be furry related.
Let me think here. I think they do non-furry. Well, they do non-furry stuff too. Both Weasel Press and Thurston Howl Publications are what's called furry inclusive, as opposed to furry exclusive. We publish furry and non-furry works.
I might hit up Weasel at some point then. Yay! I can publish! Woo! 200 and something poems, all just on DeviantArt. Great. Copy pasting all day. Okay. So I mean, about the furry, since we brought it up, the Furry Writers Guild, and obviously Adwolf actually wanted to ask about that. So what exactly does the Furry Writers Guild do in particular? What's
okay? I'll try to do the guild justice, as I'm just a member and not an administrator of it. The guild is mostly just a community where any furry writer can find support, can find motivation, can find advice, find readers, even find publishers. So it's just a good resource for anyone who's even interested in furry writing at any stage of the game.
I just remember that I was going to the Furry Writers Guild at one point, and I was sort of discouraged specifically because for membership you needed to be published or something along the lines of that.
Well, to my knowledge, and I'm sure someone in the chat will correct me if I'm wrong. To my knowledge, you have to have even like a story or a poem published in even self-published, to my knowledge, to be labeled a member. But you can still have an account on the forums, even without publication. We have a Slack chat, which is basically like I am with subject-based channels. That you do have to be what's called a member. But again, it's not like you have to pay a membership fee. You don't have to have X amount of publications. So it's really not too bad. It's not as terrifying as some guild memberships may be.
All right. That's actually that's decent. Okay.
I suppose that's just for quality control purposes, like so that every Tom, Dick, and Harry can't get in. Oh.
Jesus, sorry. Oh.
Your phone. You scare very easily.
You have no idea.
Yeah, like crazy. It's crazy. You okay?
Give me a sec. Scratch, ask a question, please. just do something.
Just calm down. Okay. I had something, but then I didn't. Let me think. No, seriously, I had a question, but then it just really slipped my mind. What? Yeah. How do you, as a writer, how do you sort of develop a fan base or a reader base? Like what? Social media presence, public readings. What would you say is sort of the more effective methods of finding the audience for your work?
Well, that's kind of the $1 million question right there. How do you get people to buy your work? Well, the biggest thing I can say is do everything. Get those readings, get Twitter, use Goodreads, have good reviews on your Amazon page. Now, I don't mean like reviews as in customer reviews, but have advanced reviews so that Amazon can publish those. You can have them on the back of your book. My favorite way to get a book sold is having a good cover. One of the panels I'll be presenting at Furry Weekend Atlanta will be on effective cover design. Because that one can irk me to no end. I look at a book cover and I basically rank it out of 10. Cover design is really important for me anyways, and for the house.
Smart.
Okay. Victor has a question here from Furry.fm. He asks, is there a place for publishing full graphic novels similar to the mainstream companies like Image, for example, or does it still cost too much in like furry sense?
Furry money.
Furry sense. Furry money. Yeah.
It's not. It does cost quite a bit of money, but it's not unbearable. I know we'd be okay with publishing a graphic novel if we were given such a query. There's not a big market for it in the fandom for whatever reason. I mean, I know there's Rabbit Valley Comics, and they do quite a bit of work with that kind of venue, but just flat-out graphic novels, we don't see too often in the fandom, which is a shame.
The graphic novels that we generally see are pornography.
Right.
Lightly.
Sure. I mean, I think the most famous furry graphic novel was probably Mouse.
Yeah, Art Spiegelman.
Which wasn't even meant to be a furry fandom book anyways.
Yeah. Fred, I think I remember seeing the article on Flera that went from like the 1960s all the way up to 1996, where there were so many graphic novels that weren't necessarily meant for a furry fandom, but
sure.
Since it's sort of kind of dried up almost. Oh, Something Dandy. That's the anime that I'm talking about.
No.
Something Dandy. Fuck.
No idea.
I'm gonna type in Something Dandy into Google. Apparently, Dandy.
You're gonna get a lot of weird results. Just saying.
Dandy anime. Space Dandy.
Is that it?
Yes, Space Dandy.
Okay.
Patton watches Space Dandy practically every single week.
I could see it. Yep, I can see him doing that.
It's an interesting perspective. I like it. I'm happy that and it's that connection with mainstream culture that really kind of like connects us all. I think it's fun.
Oh sure, absolutely.
Let's see.
I know Rakuin in the comments says that Fur Planet does comics possibly, and that House Pets is printed.
Oh right, yeah, Fur Planet is also a big comic. Yeah.
But I mean, again, House Pets is, I think, worked on by Rick. Yeah, on by himself. He prints that himself.
Right.
So it's not like a publishing company would do it for someone.
And we're actually going to be having Rick as an illustrator for an upcoming book also.
Oh, nice.
Which will be
You guys
quite
are
cool.
awesome. You're like so awesome right now.
How do you mean?
Like, it's just that. Like, I mean, just randomly. You're the tempo of the publishing company at this point. Tempo randomly working on like 4 or 5 different projects at the same time. You're just like, oh no, they'll work for us. We got Lucas. We got this person. Whatever. We just throwing them up.
No, we got these high-profile people
here
working for us. Don't worry, no big deal.
And I'm just kind of sitting here going like, I'm just some guy from South Africa who'd like you to be in a podcast with us, and we're just going to talk shit. Okay, great. Yes or no?
Well,
No? Well, I was expecting. Yeah.
Right now we're working on about 25 different publishing projects, which is hectic. But one of the things we pride ourselves on is headhunting. If we come across an author we like on SoFurry, we message them. We had a recent book, 7 Deadly Sins, which was kind of it has both erotica stories, horror stories, just furries at their darkest and worst. A delightfully morbid collection. And I was trying to figure out how to do, I had this idea for art for the book, where each part would be separated by an illustration of one of the sins as a furry. So what I did is I looked on FA. I just typed in 7 deadly sins. And I found there was one artist who had done like 4 illustrations. He goes by the name of Dark Chaos. There's no A in the word dark. And they weren't bad. I was like, okay, this would probably be a good idea. So I just messaged him saying, you know, can we use some of your illustrations for this upcoming book we have? And he was like, yes and no. I want to just make new illustrations altogether. I was like, okay. You know, and now he's like one of our big artists. He's a pleasure to work with. I mean, a lot of our authors, artists, and editors even, we just headhunted for.
Okay.
And it's just a great way to do it. We make so many connections that way, and we build so many great business relationships.
That's really cool.
Another question from Adwolf. Sorry, scratch.
No, I'm done.
Okay. What are the typical sales numbers for furry novels, novellas / anthologies?
Sure, good question. Right now, our big sales are in anthologies. That's kind of why we started to capitalize on those. And I think that this year, at least, we're the house with the most anthology submission calls right now, I think. I think that's correct. But our sales numbers for anthologies often get, I'd say, a few hundred each. Novels, they usually get quite a bit of sales in the first month or two. And then whenever we do a book signing, that generates a lot of sales too. A lot of our books are appearing on Amazon bestsellers lists for different genres right now too.
Nice.
Which is always delightful. Yeah. And I know one of us won a Ursa Major Award a couple years ago. Actually, it was last year. So some of our books are getting the recognition they need, which is good.
Okay. All right. And then just a follow-up question. How do these numbers compare to non-furry books?
Well, I should be a good one to answer that just because we do both. They do about the same, honestly. I wouldn't think it just from an objective standpoint, but they sell about the same actually.
All right.
As long as you're marketing to an actual set audience, a niche audience, it's going to sell.
Fair enough. Tongue-in-cheek question from Adwolf. Are artists of writers the biggest prima donnas?
Oh, let me think here.
You complete the fifth if you need to.
I would argue it's between authors and editors sometimes. Sometimes. We've had a few authors that were, let me think here. What's the best way to put this? Some authors have had issues with their editors, often because a lot of authors have this mentality that their story is perfect the way it is, and they often refuse to take edits. And some editors, I don't think there's any we have in the house right now because not all of our editors stay with us, but a lot of our editors have had issues because they want to be just destroyers of words. And they don't do well with, what should I say, customer service? We don't have that right now, thankfully. But we did have that with a few editors in the past.
They don't do well with, how do you say, talking to people.
Yeah, that one. But yeah, it's this idea that an author and editor have a relationship. And it's often hard to get an author to realize that it is indeed a relationship. There's give and there's take. And that's a hard balance sometimes. It's authors often think that because we accept their work, that it's good the way it is, and that our purpose as a publishing house is just to have the author do what he wants. But they don't often realize that we're not. This isn't going to be a. I'm going to make up a name. A John Smith book. This is going to be a THP book also. Our name goes on just as much as theirs. So we wanted to represent the quality. We wanted to have the quality we represent.
Yeah. You don't put your name on shit.
Right. Exactly.
To put it bluntly.
Yes, we have to fight with authors sometimes on that concept, but generally they've all been pretty receptive. It's just been like one or two small cases here and there. But I've noticed it talking to other publishers too, though, that they have similar issues occasionally.
All right.
All right. Okay. We're actually running into an hour and a half now, which is kind of the length of the podcast. Would you like to plug anything? Anything that you'd like to talk about beforehand? Or beforehand?
Before we sign off.
Before we sign off, yeah. Anything that you want other people who are listening to maybe pay attention to? What kind of books are coming out soon? Let's ask that question.
Sure. So some of our upcoming books, we have one by Stephen Coughlin that's going to be called Gizmo's Gathering Storms, which is a young adult sci-fi book, genetically modified species, which is always a fun approach to furry literature in general. With actually cover art done by Dark Chaos, that artist I mentioned earlier. We also have a couple of anthologies coming up, including Species Wolves. Species is our new anthology series that's meant to relate to something like Heat or Fang or Roar, but ours is actually, each volume represents a different species. So each story represents that species to make it unique. So our first one is Species Wolves, which should be coming out over the summer. And in between those two books, we actually have the second volume of Furries Among Us. This time it'll have another piece by Fred Patton. It'll have Phil Geis in there. It'll have Bill Kiefer, the author of The Goat, which was published by Weasel Press. We have the International Anthropomorphic Research Project contributing yet again. So again, we have all these big name people contributing to the Furries Among Us, which is always a pleasure seeing that representation there. And I guess another plug would just be make sure you follow our Twitter page and stay abreast of upcoming anthologies, because we definitely want writers as much as we want readers. All
right. In respect to the editing, actually, and the proofreading and that stuff, what requirements are there that people that you need from the people who might be doing the editing? Just final question, I guess. And then, do people get paid for it?
Good question. So we have 3 different types of the editing process. To start, we have what we call editors. These people work on major content issues. For example, this chapter needs to be cut. Why do you have this minor character in here? Why is this character portrayed in such a sexist manner? You need more description here. Change the voice to third person instead of first. Stuff like that. The second stage is proofreading, which is basically, this needs to be in American English, not British English. You need a comma here. This word is spelled wrong. Why don't you just make this a new paragraph? Stuff like that.
Okay.
And then finally, we have beta reading, which is basically the book is just given to a couple of individuals, and they just write down any glaring errors they see running through it. Which at that point, there's usually between 5 to 10, usually at that point. Sometimes like 2, which is wonderful. And as far as payment goes, that's where our house is super interesting and unique. All of our staff are paid royalties like the author is on projects they work on. So instead of getting paid X amount up front, an editor might get paid 25% of the book sales. And for years, I get like 10% usually. So, and our cover artists get the same, which is always, it amazes Weasel Press because of the way we do things. Our artists for our covers, we typically give them like $50 to $75 up front for a really strong illustration or even the full book illustrated. Plus we give them a percent of royalties.
Okay.
And that works really well for a lot of our artists.
I keep getting questions at this point, which is fine by me, I guess, if you're willing to hold on for us for a bit. A place that they send for what email would they send to for potential publishing? God, that sentence. Okay, go.
My email for any questions, whether it's submissions or otherwise, is Jonathan. That's JONATHAN .thurstonhowlpub@gmail.com. We do have a website, thurstonhowlpublications.com, which is still under maintenance.
You could pop that in the Skype so that I can just pop that in the chat, maybe. But yeah, carry on.
Yeah, I can do that. So I'm not even sure the website's live right now. It's probably not, but it should be live sometime this week. All the same. Yeah, it's not connected right now, but we do have a website, and that has more of the formal submission guidelines. But all the same, if anyone ever has a question, even when the website's live again, you can always email me or shoot me a message through Twitter. Okay. It's always fun too. Yeah.
That's pretty awesome. So with that, I think, thank you very, very much for being on the podcast, firstly. And we hope to actually have you on again soon because, geez, this was full. I loved it.
But it was enjoyable. Thank you so much for having me.
And I'd just like to sort of give a couple of shout-outs. I'm going to start with the guests on first stream here. I've got guest 382, guest 365, one from South Africa, one from Germany. And then from there we've got Brastos, Jaren, Red Scar, The Old Wolf RSA, Vanda, Victor, Wolfie, Baron. And then on the first stream side we had Rakuin, Bun, Kinkinzede, Mog, Brastus, and Tetsuo was on here at some point. So yeah, thank you guys for listening. We really, really appreciate the commentary and the questions that we've been getting from your side, this has been a lot more interactive, which is awesome because a lot of people just sit here and go like, I'm just gonna listen. It's good to have interaction. I love interaction because as a teacher, I die without it. But yeah, so for those of you who are still listening and want to have a little bit of metal in your life, a little bit of rock slash, what else? What other music have I started going to now, Scratch?
I don't know.
Native American protest rock.
Okay.
Mary and Saint
like
something.
What, like Return to Innocence meets REM or some shit?
Yeah, something like that. It's really, really cool. She's an awesome singer. She's been around since the 1960s. Was against segregation, and yet nobody paid her any attention. And nowadays people are like, oh my god, she's amazing. So that's always good. I have her album. What the hell? Music. Buffy St. Marie.
Okay.
Absolutely amazing singer. But yeah, so if you guys want to have a listen, just come over to furry.fm, listen to some of the music, and yeah, I'll probably be running till about 12 o'clock our time, which is, what is it? It's 9:40 now, our time, so we're running till 12 if you guys are willing to stay up that late. Everybody has work. Brastos says that he's everywhere.
Good to know.
He really is. Yeah, I'm frightened slightly. Yeah, okay, great stuff. thank you guys all for listening. Thanks, Scratch, again for co-hosting with me. Really, really appreciate it. And thank you again, Hal, for being with us. It was a pleasure having you. It really was.
Well, thank you for having me.
Awesome.
Right.
Okay.
And we'll see you guys again next week.
With hopefully Fred Patton.
Hopefully.
He just needs to arrange, so we'll figure that out throughout the week.
Yeah. All right. Cheers, everybody.
Cheers, guys.
Bye-bye.